Hello, mathematicians. Today we are moving on to lesson 611, where we are going to talk about angle measures as additive. I want you to think about what word you hear in additive to help you figure out its meaning. I see the word add. So thinking about how angles can be additive and adding some angle measures together. We're going to be learning some new vocabulary and getting some practice with different angle measures based on all the things you've learned so far with acute angles, obtuse angles, straight angles, reflex angles, and all the different degrees that they measure. And I know that you've been learning how to measure angles as well. We're going to use our knowledge of all of this, our background knowledge and all this, to help us with today's lesson. So if you take a look here, I have some angles. Looks a little different than just having one angle. I see multiple angles here. And if you remember, when we label or name angles, we need to make sure that whatever letter is in the middle is our vertex. So let's take a look at our little warm-up. And it says the measure of angle APB is 17 degrees. The measure of angle BPC is 33 degrees. Without using a protractor, find the measure of another angle in the diagram. So let's take a look here and let's really dissect what we're looking at. So the measure of angle APB is 17 degrees. Now we need to look at, let's use a different color here, looking at the measure of BPC, and that angle measure is 33 degrees. If we want to figure out the angle measure of the remaining angle, which would be angle APC, what would we do to figure that out? Well, I'm given two numbers here, 33 and 17. I would be able to add these angles together to figure out this full angle measure. So when I add 33 plus 17, I get 50. So angle, and again, we have to label it APC because we're trying to figure out this angle measure. So we have to label it here, angle APC measures 50 degrees. We can use our knowledge from a measurement we're given from one angle and another to figure out the missing piece. Let's take a look at some vocabulary words that'll help us with today's lesson and getting some practice with more additive angles. We have a supplementary angle that we're going to be talking about and a complementary angle. And these two are different and sometimes can get confusing. So we will think about ways that we can remember what each of them measures out to be. So let's take a look at supplementary angles. Well, I'm going to use my knowledge of, I recognize that this is a straight angle. And I notice that I have another angle here because it's split. That kind of cuts it and splits up into two different angles. I have a letter here, A, so we need to find out our missing angle. Well, I recognize that I have a straight line here, a straight angle, and I remember that straight angles equal 180 degrees. But again, I don't need to know this entire angle. I just want to know a little piece of this angle. So what we're going to look at is thinking about our equation of, well, if I know I have 180 degrees for my straight angle, and I have this 30 degrees here, I'm going to need to figure out its difference. So I would need to set up my equation with my unknown. I could do it 180 minus 30 would get me 150 degrees. And I can see if that makes sense. Well, I know it has to be an obtuse angle, and I know 150 degrees is an obtuse angle. Supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180 degrees. Your key to look for, if you want to know if it's supplementary, is to look for that straight angle. Now let's take a look at complementary angles. When you see this here, what do you notice? I notice that I have a square here, and I recognize that this is a 90-degree angle, but it's split. So once again, I need to use my knowledge and think about, well, if I'm given 65 for this angle, I need to piece together what B is. Well, since this is a 90-degree angle total, let's use what we know, and we can subtract that. And when we subtract 90 minus 65, we get 25 degrees. So complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. Today in your math journal, you are going to be looking at page 218, and you are going to be doing exactly what we just did. You're going to be thinking about, you're not using a protractor because you're going to use what you know. You're going to figure out and think about, is this a complementary angle, which adds up to 90 degrees, or is it a supplementary angle, which adds up to 180? Remember, complementary, we're going to be looking for that right angle, and supplementary, we're going to be looking for that straight angle. And we're going to be using our unknowns to help us figure it out. So making sure we're setting up our equations. All right, mathematicians, off you go.